Have you ever been in the middle of a heated argument, perfectly ready to make your point, but suddenly your throat tightens? Your chest caves in, and before you can even speak, the tears just start falling. And the worst part, the other person looks at you and says, "Why are you crying? We're just talking." If this is you, listen to me very carefully. You are not weak. You are not losing the argument. Most people believe crying during a fight means you are emotionally fragile. But the truth is entirely different. Your brain is not broken. It is executing a highly advanced survival protocol. Let's look at the actual biology. The real problem is not your inability to handle pressure. It is your brain's ancient alarm system. Psychologists call this the amygdala hijack. Think of your brain as an operating system. The amygdala is the threat detection software. When someone raises their voice, gets defensive, or challenges you, your brain cannot tell the difference between a physical threat and an emotional one. It instantly triggers your fight, flight, or freeze response. Your body pumps out massive amounts of adrenaline. You suddenly have enough strength to lift a 200-pound object, but you are just standing in your kitchen. With nowhere to channel that massive wave of physical energy, your body has to release the pressure valve somehow. For you, that release is tears. Crying is just your nervous system's way of keeping you from physically exploding. It is a biological reset button. I have found that society gets this completely backward. We praise the person who stays ice cold during a fight. We call them rational and strong. I honestly believe that is a massive flaw. The person who stays perfectly numb while hurting someone else is the one with the broken system. Your tears are simply your body screaming what your words cannot. This physical overload has a clinical name. It is called emotional flooding. When you get flooded, your heart rate skyrockets. Cortisol dumps into your bloodstream. The logical, problem-solving part of your brain entirely shuts down. You lose the neurological ability to process language. This is exactly why your throat feels incredibly tight. You suddenly cannot catch your breath. Picture a woman sitting on her couch, desperately trying to explain why she feels unappreciated. Her partner crosses his arms and sighs. Instantly, her stomach drops. Her vision narrows. Her body is preparing for survival, not a debate. But why does this happen to you, and not the person you are arguing with? You might simply be wired differently. Roughly 20% of the population possesses the trait of a highly sensitive person. Your nervous system is literally built to absorb more data. Most people think you are just overreacting to the conversation, but psychology shows you are actually processing 10 times the information. You aren't just hearing their words. Your brain is simultaneously analyzing their tone of voice. You are tracking their micro-expressions. You are absorbing every ounce of their negative energy. It is absolute sensory overload. You aren't too sensitive. Your nervous system is just absorbing the truth that their ego is trying to hide. Now let's look at where this hits the hardest: the modern workplace. In corporate spaces, we are deeply infected by hustle culture. You are expected to be an emotionless machine. In my analysis, the modern workplace is a breeding ground for emotional trauma. We spend 40 hours a week biting our tongues. We constantly decode passive-aggressive emails. We smile through the stress of digital hyperconnectivity. I firmly believe corporate professionalism is often just a socially acceptable form of emotional suppression. This builds a psychological time bomb inside of you. A man sits at his desk, staring at a Slack message he cannot bring himself to answer. Later that week, he completely breaks down and cries in the bathroom. He loses it during a mild performance review. He isn't crying because his boss gave him bad feedback. He is crying because the dam finally broke. Studies show U.S. employees lose billions of dollars in paid hours annually due to emotional dysregulation. We are terrified of confrontational breakdowns. This ties perfectly into the toxic positivity backlash of our digital age. We live in a society completely obsessed with curated happiness. You are constantly told to look on the bright side. You must never let them see you sweat. Most people believe forcing a smile makes you resilient. But the truth is, emotional muting has a severe cost. When you force yourself to wear a mask of happiness for too long, your genuine emotions get trapped. They rot in the basement of your psyche. Anger is just the bodyguard for your sadness. When the bodyguard fails, the tears fall. I have noticed a disturbing trend in modern therapy culture. We are taught to intellectualize our feelings instead of actually feeling them. We use therapy speak to avoid the raw, messy reality of being human. We label everything toxic to avoid friction. The breakdown you experience during a fight is often the result of years of forced emotional suppression. Your brain basically says, "Enough is enough." It forces you to feel everything you have been hiding all at once. It strips away the intellectual mask. It goes even deeper when we look at our romantic relationships. If you uncontrollably sob when arguing with your partner, pay close attention. It might have nothing to do with who forgot to wash the dishes. Emotional dysregulation during conflict is heavily tied to anxious attachment. In the era of modern dating fatigue and ghosting, the fear of abandonment is incredibly prevalent. We are terrified of being left behind. When your partner pulls away emotionally or raises their voice, your brain isn't processing a simple disagreement. Trauma is just survival software running in the background. Your brain is flashing back to a time in your past. It remembers when conflict meant someone you loved was going to leave you. Your tears are a subconscious defense mechanism. Sometimes the behavior you hate about yourself is actually a brilliant survival strategy. It is your inner child begging for reassurance. It is a desperate plea for safety in a moment of perceived abandonment. I honestly believe how someone reacts to your tears tells you everything you need to know about their character. Pay attention to what they do. If someone uses your tears to gaslight you, walk away. If they call you crazy or dramatic, that is a calculated manipulation tactic. They are weaponizing your biological response to avoid taking accountability for their own abrasive behavior. So how do we navigate this physical response? First, you have to stop apologizing for your tears. When you say you are sorry for crying, you validate a dangerous lie. You validate the false idea that your emotional response is a flaw. Your brain is not a liability. Emotion is just your body's internal warning system. Taking a timeout isn't retreating. It isn't losing the fight. It is giving your nervous system the time it needs to stand down. Practice grounding techniques to trick your sympathetic nervous system. Feel your feet on the floor. Take slow, deep breaths to lower your heart rate. Lastly, set ironclad boundaries around how people are allowed to argue with you. You teach people how to treat you during a conflict. You feel things deeply in a world that refuses to feel anything at all. That is not a weakness. That is your greatest strength. The next time the tears start to well up, take a deep breath. Let them fall entirely without shame. Your voice deserves to be heard, tears and all. If this video brought you clarity today, make sure to hit that subscribe button to join the Deep Psyche Decode community. Stay strong, and I will see you in the next video.